Welcome back to Boss Economics World, folks, where we cut through the noise and give it to you straight. Today, we're going to dissect how good intentions can pave the road to, well, economic disaster. Let's face it, the UK's latest attempt to save the taxpayer's dime is looking like an underpowered engine on the brink of collapse. So buckle up, because we're diving deep into UK Chancellor of the Exchequer Rachel Reeves' master plan to cut down on wasteful spending by forming a brand new efficiencies unit, the Office for Value for Money, OVFM. Spoiler alert, it's floundering, and I'm here to tell you why. Alright, let's set the stage here. Reeves wants to slice off 5% of wasteful government spending by 2026. Now, it might sound like a Nobel-worthy idea, but have you ever tried carving meat off a bone when there's hardly any meat left? The OVFM, with only 12 full-time staff members, yes, just 12, is tasked with this massive responsibility. And even more telling is their chair, David Goldstone, who only has a one-year contract. The Treasury Committee itself has raised serious doubts, pointing to just how toothless this new efficiencies unit may be. How on earth can a team this small, with so little time and an unclear mandate, steer us toward meaningful spending cuts when the unit looks more like a token gesture than a serious operation? Let's not kid ourselves. You could argue that this unit is just a way for the government to tick the "we are saving money" box without making any substantial impact. Something we like to call optics in this business, a PR-friendly facade that hides what really matters, systemic inefficiencies that no half-baked initiative will fix. But hold on tight, because this whole saga has one colossal elephant in the room: gilt yields. Rising gilt yields have been wreaking havoc on the UK's fiscal landscape. Now, for those of you who aren't following the heated financial debates day in and day out, and let's face it, normal people probably don't, gilt yields are essentially the cost of borrowing for the government. Bonds get pricier, interest rates rise, and citizens' wallets feel the squeeze. This isn't just theoretical talk. The UK's public sector debt-to-GDP ratio hit a whopping 100.2% in October 2024, a level not seen since the early 1960s. Rising yields mean the UK's ability to borrow cheaply is evaporating right before our eyes. Borrowing now costs an arm and a leg, so unless some genius steps in with a revolutionary plan to curb inflation and stabilize the debt, any attempts to balance the budget through mere efficiency are bubblier than a can of Coke left in the sun. Reeves' plan sounds great on paper, but in reality, it's a race against time in a fiscal environment that's spiraling out of control. Let's be frank, if we're staring down a debt crisis with inflation edging higher, trying to save 5% of government spending is akin to hunting for pennies in a house fire. With bureaucracy sprawling across various sectors, it's hard to see hardline savings materializing anytime soon without making catastrophic cuts that could endanger vital public services. Reeves and the Treasury are skating on thin ice here, precariously balancing on fiscal rules that they hope will keep economic chaos at arm's length. Sure, the value for money argument makes for compelling headlines. But the manpower and resources behind it? Simply laughable. You can't save millions, or billions, on the back of a 12-person crew, especially when your fiscal headroom is razor-thin. Oversight is blurred, goals are even less tangible, and nobody is clear on how, exactly, this will happen. It's not about armchair critics. It's about very real, very pressing concerns of businesses struggling to keep stable amid a highly uncertain business climate. Interest rates for households are following the gilt yields, leading to a potential mortgage crisis. Forecasts show the marginal propensity to save is decreasing, meaning British households are not only feeling squeezed today, but they'll have little left in savings when things really get harsh. If there's one thing that sticks out like a sore thumb in policymaking, it's empty rhetoric like efficiency savings without a clear roadmap for implementation. Cutting 5% here might chip away some waste, but where? Government departments are already strapped for cash after over a decade of austerity measures. Healthcare, for instance, has been battered with bleak funding streams. With NHS strikes and chronic staff shortages across hospitals and GP clinics, casual belt-tightening could morph into system collapse. Education. Classrooms are bursting at the seams, and teachers are shoving their own money into supplies. How do you slice funds from that without sparking yet another public outrage? Whatever sector you look at, none can realistically afford efficiencies without significant harm delivered to the British public. And history agrees. Look back at the past few Conservative chancellors: Rishi Sunak, Sajid Javid, Philip Hammond, all with budgets marked by the same rhetoric of trimming fat from the system, only to push the system itself into overdrive costs as we fatigued infrastructure and essential services. If anything, this will be yet another cycle of cuts turning into further inefficiencies down the line. We need to zoom out here. What we're talking about goes far beyond government spreadsheets. It spills over into household living standards. With everything from energy prices to mortgage costs rising, the average British household has been engulfed in a cost-of-living crisis for months, even before the sound bite about efficiency. Cutting government spending means, in practice, cutting support for a community already squeezed dry by increased taxation, high inflation rates, and wage stagnation. Rent, food, utilities, and transportation costs are already surging like wildfire. Let's throw in a quick stat. UK inflation flared above 9% in mid-2023, which marked the highest inflation rate since the Bose 2% target, creating a burning financial headache in every home across the island. Inflation might slightly be easing by 2025, tipping closer to 5% as of January, but that's still way above the comfortable margins ordinary folks are used to. Remember, wage growth has hardly caught up, keeping consumer purchasing power weak and leaving much of the workforce stuck in what we economists diplomatically refer to as real wage erosion. The UK had already experienced months of widespread public sector strikes driven by wage disputes. Don't act like you forgot Strike Britain 2024, and if those sector workers feel the inevitable budget cuts come, expect public outrage to heat up in ways that narrative-controlling political leaders and economists like ourselves can barely forecast. Ah yes, the political side of it, which always, eventually, lies at the true heart of these economic schemes. Reeves, as Chancellor, is trying to balance expectations from all sides. Her predecessors followed the exact same playbook, promise general efficiencies, implement surface-level cuts, but eventually flounder politically. There's little trust left in whether anyone can rein in public spending without triggering painful consequences. And guess what? Votes matter. Fast forward to the next UK general election, 2025, and Reeves' political reputation will hang on whether this efficiencies move actually delivers results, if she's still in office. Brits won't tolerate endless dithering when daily life becomes even harder. What does that mean for the British Parliament? It means political animals will need scapegoats, media coverage will intensify its focus on where the failure started. The worse it goes, the clearer that scapegoat becomes. It's a tale as old as democratic time. Success won't mean flashy efficiency savings. It means dodging socio-economic collapse while staying on the right side of fiscal responsibility. So far, the balance is looking ugly. What we're seeing in this so-called efficiency project is symptomatic of a larger global phenomenon, Western economies plagued by stagnant growth, rising costs, and governments scrambling to clean up the mess left in the wake of relentless crises, Brexit, the pandemic, and now post-COVID inflationary blowback. All these add pressure to make stronger fiscal moves. But when policies are so rudimentary, so poorly structured, the long-term grind will strike home. Reeves' OVFM might just be yet another misstep in handling an increasingly complex economic puzzle. Without radical new fiscal strategies, not just sound bites, persistent pressures only intensify. By the way, what many pundits don't highlight. The very British private sector. Sectors like housing, consumer, and healthcare are bogged down by post-pandemic drags, as well as fundamental errors in their economic backing. Pushed forward only by temporary stimulus, without long-term stabilization investments, cracks quickly form. Spend enough years pushing low-effort spending programs, and every tax-paying worker is hit.